Not everything requires a hex or a curse. If you're somebody that just doesn't protect yourself, but you're quick to react, and then you're very fast to go and throw on somebody else, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna make your situation worse, especially if you're not divining over the situation. A lot of times you want to check to see if it's even worth it, but 9 times out of 10, it's one of those things where if you try to let go and let God or the universe, usually you will tend to see it play out one way or another. You may not always be around that person to see it happen, but it may come in the form of something good happening to you. I do feel like that's a gift of Scorpio in the 8th house, and if you have any degrees at 8 degrees and 20 degrees, especially if you have it at 15 degrees Scorpio, which is the avatar degree. In the last video, I forgot to mention the degrees for Cancer. I probably will make a part 3 because there is something else I wanted to mention about Cancer, but I'm only going to focus on Scorpio right now and some of the gifts that Scorpio has. I mentioned hexing and cursing and all that in the beginning because that's along the lines of revenge, something Scorpio is known for. All the water signs, but when you think of revenge, you think of Scorpio. You also think of the occult with Scorpio. Scorpio rules the genitals and the anus. It rules power, transformation, your ancestors. Cancer does too, but Scorpio is about how things have evolved over time. A lot of people don't know this, but Scorpions, they evolved from lobsters, and lobsters are along the Scorpion family. Scorpions used to be sea scorpions. You can go look it up. They used to be huge. They used to have like an 8-foot wingspan, maybe even bigger than that, until fish started to get teeth and jaws, and they started to prey on scorpions. So they evolved further. And then when climates changed due to the meteor strikes, some areas were more shallow than others. So the scorpions that survived, they adapted and they grew different limbs and they became land scorpions. And the ones that didn't, they stayed in the sea and they became lobsters. You can go look it up. But Scorpions, or Scorpio, I will say, it deals with your ancestors to a degree and how you've evolved over time. Scorpio is about evolution also. So over time, how things evolve and what's passed down and how you evolve in the meantime. Because of certain adaptations, there was different branches of different families of sea scorpions. Same thing with the things that you do in this day and age while you're alive. And general curses is what I'm talking about. Let's say you did decide to throw back on somebody, if you're into the occult, and let's say you are aware of that, or if you're not even into the occult, let's say somebody did you dirty and you want to go and get back at them, and let's say you get arrested and you can't see your kids and your kids grow up without a father or a mother. That's going to affect the way that they act when they get older. Or let's say if you did decide to throw on somebody, one way or another, it would kind of come back on you. A lot of people don't like to believe that because they are so gung-ho about a power trip. They want to feel powerful, but obviously they haven't gone through enough and been brought to their knees. Capricorn rules that, but I'm going to make that another video at another time. A lot of times power seems to drop right in Scorpio's lap. And like I said, your lap, your genitals, Scorpio rules the genitals and the anus. So when power falls into your lap or in your hands, because the 8th house of Scorpio is Gemini. Gemini rules the hands, arms, and lungs. What you do with that information or that power usually tends to go one way or another, with the left-handed path or the right-handed path. It's going to affect your lineage one way or another, or what you're going to inherit in the future, or whether or not you give up your inheritance, or how it's going to affect your bloodline. Because a lot of water signs, they can be tapped in, and if you get overly emotional and you're unable to react in a way that is conducive, or let's say beneficial for the greater good of you and all involved, you usually tend to sting yourself. That's one thing that all the water signs can share. Scorpio would rather sting themselves than to let somebody else sting them. Cancer can tend to, let's say an unevolved cancer, can tend to get a little violent. I will say the most violent, and kind of ruin their situation due to making decisions out of emotion. And Pisces, if pushed hard enough, they can kind of give in to negative forces, because Pisces is the most open to entities. So if they are pushed, they can kind of snap and let something take over. But that's going to be a whole nother video. But I want to talk about how Scorpios, usually they have a choice where they can choose to let something go and let God and watch the universe work. And that's where the dove in the dove kind of plays out in the 7 stages of Scorpio. That innocence that some Scorpios tend to lose at some point in time, but they get it back at the Phoenix stage or the Eagle stage. There's 7 stages. You got the scorpion, the rattlesnake, the dove, the lizard, I think it's a spider, the wolf, and the eagle, and the phoenix. I might have added one in there. Comment below if I'm wrong, but in order to get through all these stages, it's kind of a learning experience. A lot of Scorpios have to go there. You can't really tell a Scorpio not to do it. They gotta be convinced through pain. If you wanted to convince a Scorpio to do something, you gotta make it seem like it's their only choice. I think in the 48 laws of power, one of the laws is like allowing your enemy an exit point. When somebody's back is against the wall and they don't have a choice, they don't really have anything to lose, so they're gonna do whatever it takes to, get what they want. Or, they don't see any point in, they basically are gonna say, fuck it, I don't have anything to lose. Think about criminals. They're willing to go do crazy things because they have nothing to lose. But if you give them a good job and a family and, some kids, they have something to lose, so they're going to be a little bit less apt to do something crazy. So if you give your enemy an outlet, somewhere that you can funnel them towards a situation that's in your favor, that's how you convince a Scorpio. All right. But a lot of the times, Scorpio is kind of hard to contain, especially because they're so secretive. So it's not really like you can control them. That's why they like to have control of their environment and wherever they are. I know this because I have Pluto in the 8th house. All right. A lot of things just kind of fall in Scorpio's lap. I will say Gemini and Scorpio and Aries, maybe even Pisces, just seem to come across valuable information or in the right place at the right time, or they know the right people. Maybe even Libra, I would say that, but it just depends on the placements you have in your birth chart. But usually Scorpio is, very, and I mean all placements, Scorpio, Venus, Mars, Mercury, especially Jupiter, Pluto, the 8th house, the 8th degree. 15 degrees is like an accident that can happen, and it's lucky. Like a truck, a school bus could hit your car. I did a spell on my wallet, put it in my glove compartment next to the steering wheel, because there's a little compartment next to the steering wheel, and it was to like attract money. A school bus, I parked my car, delivered some food. This is back when I was delivering Chinese food. I was struggling financially. I parked my car, I left my wallet in the car, went up to the house, gave the customer the food. As I turned around, I see this school bus coming down, and I hear a big old crash. And I walk around to the other side, and the school bus stopped, and the lady had hit my car. I'm going to have to make this a part 2.